I'd like to call to order the regular police board meeting for Tuesday, March the 7th at 4:30. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sitiq peoples. It is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And on the consent agenda, we have meetings and minutes and the action list. And if I could have someone move the consent agenda. That's been moved and seconded. Anybody see anything that they actually wanted to pull out or had a question? Or were there any errors or omissions in the minutes as you reviewed them? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda, and that carries. Public participation. Disinfecting sandy wipes, would you like to speak? Okay. On that note.
Seeing anyone?
We will move on to item number. I kind of thought when I started, and there was people here, that we were going to have somebody every meeting, but I think it's where we had that good meeting with the West Kootenay people for racial justice last week. So I think that, yeah, okay. Business arising from previous meetings, we have none. So we're right on to 5. Over to the Chief Constable's reports, 5A, B, and C.
Okay, since the last meeting, Raj and I were down in Burnaby for the BC Association of Chiefs of Police and BC Association of Municipal Chiefs of Police. Most of the items are covered off in BC ACP because that's the meetings that everybody's at. That's the bulk of the meeting. So there was actually quite a bit over the 3 days. So I just kind of bullet pointed the highlights of some of the probably more interesting things and some of the stuff that impacts us more here. There's quite a few things that are sort of a little mainland centric and comms that were part of the discussions, but doesn't really affect us. So firstly, the JIBC, and I've talked a few times about some of the different struggles that they're having, rising costs like everybody else. Maintaining staff, the demand for either bigger troops going through training or more troops going through in a year, just because the demand continues to go up. Policing, like I think a lot of businesses and industries and stuff are hitting that, where there's a fair bit of attrition, people retiring, etc. But they keep adding constables to the departments, and Surrey is a big need at this moment anyways, until the decision's made, is they're going to need quite a few officers trained. So basically they are hiring a consultant or somebody to basically do a study on the efficiencies and the capacities related to the demands that are currently outstripping the ability of the JIBC to keep up with those demands. So every department has to agree to pay a percentage of those costs for the consultant, which our portion will be quite small, but unfortunately they didn't give us an exact number. But anyways, we do like one recruit a year, where lots of places do probably upwards of 50 or 60, like Vancouver and Surrey and them. So there's a new coroner's MOU, which basically I think they just updated a few of the things in the act. They said more or less edits and revisions, but nothing significant. So, but there is a new MOU in place signed by all the departments. Body worn cameras, that's moving along fairly well for province as a whole, I guess. Right now it's at the stage where they're developing the SOPs, so the standard operating procedures, and those will really be around storage, continuity, and disclosure. That's the and retention is the other one. That's a big deal, depending on what the crime type is, if they're actually at an incident. But otherwise, there's still a minimum retention period in case somebody comes forward 6 months from now and makes a complaint about an interaction they had with an officer that you may not at the time as the officer not think it was anything significant, and if you don't save that stuff. So I think the minimum retention on most things is 2 years. But again,
That's gonna be
decided.
a lot of data to store, eh?
Well, that's always been the killer with not so much
And
getting the
images.
cameras and using them, but it's
Mhm.
having we need our own server pretty much to
Mhm.
store that on because of the retention policies.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if this was before you were on board, but Axon, right? Yeah, the Axons, they're looking at going to sort of a provincial-wide service for cloud-based storage. So every department wouldn't have to take on those significant costs and resource issues because you probably need somebody just doing that full time. As I said, you'd have to buy a pretty big server and stuff to keep all that on. So
Yeah.
Between the body cams and likely the dash cams and stuff coming out, that'll, again, they're just trying to figure out what's the most secure way to have it uploaded to the cloud, and then they organize it, look after it. If you need something from a specific incident or whatever, you can let them know and they'll find it and pull that piece out that you need. There was some discussion of how they would be sort of the masters of getting what you need for the courts as well.
Okay.
So it's
It makes sense to consolidate it like that
Yeah.
rather than have every
Everybody needs it.
department do their own.
yeah, it would be, and especially for smaller departments, like just the cost per
Mhm.
officer would be so much higher for us to do. So it's kind of exciting, and I remember when the dash cams came out for the RCMP, and I don't know, I wouldn't say I was thrilled about it. I just thought it was one more thing to have to look after that. But I guess having seen it for several years and then having seen the footage and things from some of the incidents and a couple officer involved shootings, I think they do more than pay for themselves. Between the dash cam and then in particular the body cams, they said, I believe the stat was the public complaints drop about 35% just
Wow.
because there's that independent recording of it. I mean,
Mhm.
they have their issues too, but it's certainly overall it's better to have them than to not have them.
Mhm.
So you can talk some about body cameras and stuff later. Your updates. Okay. Well, we were just talking about it today that
Mhm.
we'll be looking at it's going to be one of the procurement capital budget things probably for next year, but trying to figure out what's the best way or what's the best order to buy them in if we can only get one year and one the next year. So more to come on that. This has kind of been reported on in previous meetings, but the Health IM project that we talked about, the province announced that the funding be covered by the province. So Raj is either on or going to get on the committee that's going to sort of oversee the disbursement of that to make
Cool.
sure we get our
That's,
fair share or a little more maybe.
and that's the app or whatever for like
Yeah.
when you're having
Mental health.
Yeah. Mhm.
Awesome.
You guys will be interested in this one. We had a presentation from all of the ESS units, so professional standards that deal with the discipline of that, talking about, they called it restorative complaint resolution. So kind of like alternate dispute resolution or the idea of using healing circles if everybody's in agreement with that. They feel like they sound like they've been able to do a couple. And the results were there was better accountability, more satisfaction from the people involved. They didn't say it, but I would guess it was way more timely system as well as going through the official OPCC and public complaints process, which takes 6 months on a basic complaint.
Mhm.
The results that they're predicting or expecting will be less human rights tribunal type complaints and fewer civil lawsuits against police. Just because, again, it's that face-to-face accountability and everybody kind of gets to tell their side of the story and that. So they just said, there's still some criteria that has to comply to Section 157 of the BC Police Act, which I was going to look up before anybody asks, but I didn't get to it today. So I'm sure it's just around the sort of different policy-driven requirements.
Have they defined a threshold of like what is too serious or severe to be addressed this way?
They haven't, or at least they didn't speak on it. I think that's going to be a bit subjective. I think as long as the complainant agrees, I think just about anything would go ahead, and anything more serious is likely going to go to a criminal investigation first anyway. So
Okay,
I think that would somewhat dictate that if it goes to criminal or criminal charges are approved, then
Mhm.
probably not going to be able to use that
Yeah.
type of a hearing. Versaterm. Again, we were talking some about Versaterm's the
Recommended system.
yeah. I just get Versaterm and Axon. So they're expanding their cloud services into Canada. Some of the issue before was a lot of the cloud, the servers and the cloud itself technically was in the United States. So that causes continuity and legal control issues.
Mhm.
It's just difficult when the storage of your data is in a different country. There's issues you run into on a couple of different fronts. They're developing the ability for dispatch to send a link to a complainant at a scene. So if somebody calls in a complaint, rather than them, the complainant trying to figure out how to put their camera on or whatever, they're working on something where dispatch can actually send them a link and they just click on it and it turns their camera on and then they can, dispatch can still talk to them and give them instructions on what they want to see and that. So dispatch has the ability to kind of direct them to film the accident, whatever the interaction is and stuff, and then relay it live time to police.
Wow.
I thought I heard somebody talking about too that they may be able to patch responding units into that as well, but I'm not sure exactly what they were planning there, but
It always sounds like magic, doesn't it?
Sufficiently advanced
Yeah, the
technology.
implementation isn't necessarily quite as good.
no. We had a presentation on mass casualty events and then you probably all heard the term active shooter, but they're kind of going away from that and just calling it an active threat because lots of incidents with knives and edged weapons and things too, or other things that can harm somebody. So they use active threat. One of the things we talked about was developing, they call it a rescue task force. So that would be a partnership with fire and ambulance. And the general idea is there's been a number of incidents, schools in particular, where there's wounded people inside. They may be in various rooms like this, and then the shooter's still active, or the active threat is still active, and police are still trying to deal with it. But it's not, the scene isn't cleared for first aid and ambulance responders to come in. But they're trying to change that because lots of people would probably survive if they could get medical attention or they could extricate them. But it sometimes it's taking so long to deal with the barricaded person or whatever that people are dying. So basically it's the practicing with fire and ambulance to come in under armed escort with the police and stage at the doors or whatever, so they can concentrate on triaging and rendering first aid to people. So something we're going to look at trying to do with the fire next time we meet them to talk about it, set something up. Decriminalization. Just in one of the things that was brought up was for us to be aware of potential FOIs related to the training that's been provided up to date, especially around issues of public complaints or if somebody overdoses or anything like that. It's not provincially mandated as mandatory training, and but up to every department to do it. So we decided that it should be mandatory training, and we're well past half the officers have completed it now. So gonna send out a reminder here right away, or did you send it today?
Today, yeah.
Okay. Just to get everybody else to get on and get it finished. It's just a preliminary training that's been set up so far, and then there's some more training that's supposed to come out in April.
Yeah.
In relation to that too, VPD is developing some best practices, which they said they will share in regards to returning illicit drugs that were not seized, but kept for safekeeping for somebody in custody, and anything under the prescribed limit would be returned. And they're suggesting, at least preliminary looking at it, that we should be offering one of the resource cards and making sure people understand that, you know, the dangers of them and where they can get some assistance, things like that. And the key thing they said, and we'll have to make sure that people actually make notes that they did those things every time they return something. So if something does happen, at least we can say we've done our due diligence to warn people and offer them some assistance.
So Chief, do you have those cards? Do you have those
Yeah.
cards? Yeah. I mean, I would like to see one personally. Is it possible? I don't know if the board has any other interest, but I would like to have one of those cards. I was interacting with some street people today and I would have liked to have had that on my person. Does it say that it has to come from a police officer?
I don't think so. I mean, they're for police to give, but I think the more, again.
Because it's just that number is on that they could call if they wanted to seek intervention.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I wouldn't mind either because I carry a naloxone kit in my
Yeah.
computer bag.
And I've got folks outside the theater all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd actually be great.
Yeah, I'll definitely get some.
yeah, I think that when you know them, I mean, I've already heard one complaint that police were too aggressive in trying to give the person the card because they didn't want it. So they should only be, the police should be waiting until the person asks for it. And that's where I'm thinking,
So if you don't know it
if-
exists,
how
how
would I
would
know
you
if
ask
the
for
card
it?
exists? So why would I be asking for it? So,
Mhm.
you know, and the answer is don't file a complaint because the police were too aggressive in trying to hand you a card. Just like, really? I'm sort of like losing my sense of humor. But
Yeah.
I mean, these street people I talked to today, I know quite well. So, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, it'd be nice to be able to say, you know, this is the new gig. It's like, you're gonna get the card, you know, so just be prepared. Be nice, take the card,
Say thank you.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
use it for fire starter if you need to, but whatever, you know, I would like to have
Okay.
a card or two.
And they actually, initially, the instruction to police was we were not to give people a card unless they asked for it. But we kind of the same question, well, how do we know everybody knows we even have the cards? They kind of got to change to, you would offer it. They said, no, you just,
It's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
And the card just has a resource number on it to call if they need some support.
yeah, there was a couple things on them. I have to look at it again just a little closer, but it's. But they also wanted it noted that police are still investigating and targeting importers, manufacturers, and traffickers. It's just, you know, usually you work up the chain, so it sort of eliminated that bottom step for us. So it's a little steeper climb, the first one to get something. I mentioned Axon developing some of the technologies around body cams and in-car cameras, but one of the other things they're working on is an in-car camera with the integrated ALPR with it, so that the automated license plate readers. So they're saying that the new models coming out will be about half the cost of the previous cameras, or sorry, half the cost of the previous ALPRs, but it has the dash cam with it too. So it's got a lot more utility and a lot more ability to capture and process information at a cheaper cost, which is always a good thing. So they're just working on now developing it to work with the cloud technologies once they kind of get that part straightened out. So I think that'll be a good thing and kind of kill two birds with one stone. Premier Eby spoke on the last day. Covered quite a bit of stuff. The you know, thing he did say was that he recognized that the police, he said, are the final social service agency for many people, and that's not really the way it should be set up. So they've got the new funding through the Safer Communities Action Plan, and part of that money is going to get police resources and staff back up to full strength, but also sort of in unison try and build back up the capabilities and resources with the different social service agencies and potentially combining the two. So like the CAR 87 and some of those things, so that, you know, you got the right people doing the right job based on their expertise.
Can I just ask you in terms of when you listen to him talk? Sorry, I'm just gotta make a note so I remember what I'm asking. In terms of like the GIBC and they're they're increasing costs. Do you think the government is ever talking to them or that they're ever talking to the government to ask for some additional funding? So when you say something to me, when I hear you say something like getting everybody up to full whatever, so whether or not it be that everybody gets a social worker or everybody just like that you have a full platoon of people doing the work, whatever the language might be. Is there ever that discussion that comes in terms of
We
giving
should start
better-
with the training.
Yeah, with the training. It's always like, they always have these great ideas. I see this in
I mean,
healthcare all the
safe
time.
communities, they want to get lots of points for giving money to municipalities. But how about money for the JIBC? Yeah.
And I'm sure that, that's one of those hot potato buttons, because when we talk about that in healthcare, it's like, oh, well, that's the Ministry of Higher Education. But I mean, is that something that would be worth?
Always listening.
Well, it's always worth it. But the chiefs have been pretty vocal with the province, I think already, and sent a few letters saying that these costs were supposed to come in 2024, and then they already bumped them back a year because they weren't going to be able to meet the budget. The budget for what the academy needed, so they actually started the cost increases a year earlier than they were going to. I know it's been a like you said, a contentious issue in a lot of the discussions around these extra costs being kind of getting downloaded on the municipalities to pay for the training and the increases. So the training and the recruits themselves having to pay more, to the point where we keep talking about not making roadblocks for people, especially people that might be a little bit more financially challenged. And it's just, again, increasing these barriers for people to get into policing. So, but so far it's just been a kind of going in a circle.
I'm wondering if this is a subject for us to propose for a resolution for the BCAPB too. It's just another advocacy group, to bring the same message.
And I look at those kind of things, and that, like, I think as I try to learn this role, is I need to have those list of things that I can advocate for, that I can speak to when I'm in different venues, right? So because I just know I could just see this being bounced to advanced education, or this might be bounced to jobs and trade. Like, there's so many ministries that they bounce us around, and so a conversation could be such that to be able to stick up my hand and say, yes, exactly, we need it for. But if I don't know what you need, I'm no good to you. Sorry, but I mean that. So this is something that I look at and I think, oh, because there's opportunities there. When people say, so what do you think? Well, I have lots of thoughts.
Well, and Janice, I think you'll get a number of items like that you can advocate for when we see the resolutions that all of the municipalities are going to bring forward for the BCAPB, because we'll eventually get a list of all the resolutions that'll be voted on at the AGM. And then they actually go and talk directly to the ministers too.
Part of the other problem though that they brought up is it seems to be a bit of a quagmire, their accounting there, because the JIBC isn't just for police training. Like DEPO was solely for police, where this is it's a educational institution that does a whole bunch of other things plus the police, and there's a whole bunch of shared costs that get passed on, and it's like, well, how do you come up with these numbers, and what's the actual operating cost for this, and what's our percentage of it?
Well, that's where they just need to fund that whole program better. And so that's where I would take the position, not so much representing the police as a police board chair, but just as a municipal government, because the fact that, within that JIBC training, I think they probably do like conservation officers, and I think that they do some paramedical stuff, and, within there. And so all of those things are necessary. The work that they're doing isn't, and so if you just funded the whole program better, then the default position is that the police get better funding.
I was just going to say though that since I came on the board, this has been an issue with the Justice Institute. There seems to be no resolution. There's all kinds of different, sets of arguments about what it does, and like you say, it's not just the police, right? That it's all this other training, then why is it, and then the funding, they're not like an educational institution, apparently, that there's different issues I've heard over the years. So it's there, and it's always there, but there doesn't seem to be any
No resolution.
resolution.
I think it'd be worth a phone call to David Pilling to ask him how they funded the board training that they've developed.
Yeah, Watson is not cheap, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so maybe, maybe he has some ideas, or maybe there's, somewhere else that pressure can be put to get some
Yeah.
cash loosened up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the last time I heard Watson at the union, I think it was the bill for 2.5 days was $25,000.
Mhm.
I seem to remember some discussion about what they do as well, like there wasn't that confidence in the Justice Institute. I remember that coming up at some point.
Well, remember the original training that I took was done by the JIBC, and then they scrapped that to go to Watson
Well,
because
there you
they
go,
felt
yeah.
that it
So there
wasn't
was-
good enough.
There was something about that institution and their, that they may not be the best bet, and maybe we should be looking at alternatives. That came up as well in discussions in the past. So
Of course,
it's the
that's not for
institution
police
that's the
training.
problem. It has a reputation and like, so I don't know how you clear that up then.
Sorry, I didn't mean to segue off here. I mean, the other thought is like, why don't the RCMP loosen their strings on the depot, and why doesn't everybody train there? But that's a whole other discussion. Continue on, chief.
I've kind of, yeah, there's questions about the RCMP training too.
I do have a one question that kind of goes back. It's not, so when you hire somebody who is not a trained police officer, they pay. If we don't send them to the Justice Institute, they pay to go to the Justice Institute?
Well, yeah, kind of both.
Okay.
We send them, like
Yeah.
they have to be sent by a department that has a seat in the training, but they pay, excuse me, they pay a fairly big portion of the tuition.
Okay,
But we pay too.
yeah, okay.
Everybody pays.
That's the story.
And the last thing on Premier Evie's talk, which I think is long overdue, is they're working on tightening up the rules around bail to limit the revolving door process and making it harder for serious and habitual offenders to get released. So that's been a fairly big push. And I mean, you see all that on the news about especially the people around vandalizing, smashing up bank windows and stuff. So I mean, it's going to lean towards the violent offenders first, and then hopefully the habitual property crime offenders second. In the community policing portion, as probably most of you know, and the mayor mentioned it a minute ago, but we had a really good positive meeting with the West Cooney People for Racial Justice, and I think going a long way in making it a positive and collaborative relationship with them. So we talked a little bit about I don't think of the acronym again, the diversity advisory.
Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Justice,
That one
equity,
behind.
diversity, and
Okay.
inclusion.
So Shiloh sent some of the information on so I'll follow up with her in a couple days or a week just to see if she's had a chance to read it. And still might be interested in that, but certainly I thought a very good meeting, just positive. Can work together.
Speaking of the diversity committee, I don't know if this is better for a camera, but I definitely have, a few people have mentioned to me that it seems like it's been a long time since there's been a meeting. And are we planning, I wonder if we shouldn't wait for the blanket ceremony and maybe actually get a meeting of that advisory committee going in light of all the things.
Yeah, and I think we've been trying to get meetings. It's just been very difficult getting everybody that can come to the same one. So,
Yeah.
But I agree. I just, we were talking about it before. Some of this other stuff that happened to kind of bring it back in the spotlight, that between Christmas and the officers and trying to get people together, it's just been sort of one thing after another, but
It's not for
not to
lack
make
of
excuses,
trying.
but
What's that?
It's not for a lack of
Yeah.
trying.
Totally, but
People are really busy and then it's, people are
Yeah, for,
away. And then we got this blanket exercise plan, but now, for different reasons, right? Both not within our control.
oh yeah, for sure. But I just felt the need to say it. 'cause-
No, and it's,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are thinking about it because it's, I feel like that too, like we sort of hired the consultant, did a bunch of work and everything, and then it's just kind of stalled. And
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen because it'll actually just kind of keep fading off into the
Mhm.
background.
Thank you.
And there's no foundation update, so.
Okay.
Good for me.
On to the next item. We're off the computer and off the paper. I think I'll stick with the paper. So Deputy Chief, the restorative justice report.
There's not much to report for Restorative Justice. The program's still continuing. Still running the school program. It just started, own it. And there's not much report in regards to stats at this point because it's early in the year.
What about the staffing issue?
There's no staffing issue.
Oh.
No, there was two facilitators. And now we're down to
Oh,
one, which
okay.
is still-
Yeah, no,
Sorry,
just
yeah.
one of Sophie just left and
But we still
Anaya,
have,
Anaya came on for the owner.
okay.
Okay, any other questions for Deputy Chief? Okay, and moving on then to item number 7, Director's Report, BC Association of Police Boards, AGM, and call for resolutions.
I don't have anything special to say about that. And it hasn't been, our next meeting is the 20th of March, of the BCAPV board. So there's, nothing specific I have to offer. But maybe you guys haven't been to a conference before, you and Lindsay.
Yeah.
So the police board's proposed resolutions, they're discussed and voted on by the whole group at the AGM. And then if they're passed, then the BCAPV executive actually takes them forward to the various ministries and, speak to them, advocates for them. Some of them there have been in the past have been quite specific. I remember the Lower Mainland, they were doing something about, had something to do with traffic stops and some kind of regulations that they wanted changed, which I don't remember us having anything to do with them. But every year they have one about whether or not the mayor should automatically be
Yeah, that has
the
come
chair
up,
of the
yeah.
board, and it's always voted down.
Always voted down?
It's
Yeah.
always voted down, yeah, by the,
Old boys.
forgive me, the old boys club that doesn't want to give up the power of being in charge. So,
Is there a deadline to submit a resolution?
Yeah, it says here the
Yeah,
April the 21st.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions because of course, I know what a resolution is and what the process will look like.
of course I
but,
do.
My question is, one is can new people and myself go back and does the I hate.
BCATV,
Yeah, do they keep a log of all of them? So can I go back in and look at the resolutions from previous years?
Mhm. I will get that for you,
Okay.
or I'll
Yeah,
circulate.
because that's always good to see what previous ones
yeah.
were. Sometimes you need to repeat some of the previous ones. And then the other issue is in terms of us as a board wanting to put some forward. Do we already have any ideas or
Well, the funding of the JIVC,
that for sure? And then would we would we set aside some time to discuss them at our next board meeting, which would be before the deadline?
maybe what I would suggest is that if there's any subjects that we think we'd like to raise, when I go to the March 20th meeting where all of the police boards are represented, we can see whether or not there are a group of 2 or 3 boards that would like to collaborate on, writing a resolution then to bring back to our individual boards to say, yes, we agree with that, or no, we don't, that kind of thing. Because some of, I can, by that time, I would see whether there's anything that's coming up in the Lower Mainland that's of particular interest to us that we hadn't thought of, whether or not there are other police boards that want to support the idea of the JIBC funding issue.
Typically, is it strength in numbers if more than one police?
Totally, yeah.
Have the
So,
same idea?
because it has to be passed at the AGM,
Yeah.
that the whole group is willing to take it forward.
So my concern here only is of course, timeline on the process. So you're talking about having some ideas to take to the March 20th meeting, just to get a feel for where they might lie,
Where
but
everybody is.
But do we, I mean, here we are, this is already March the 7th. Do we have any idea of what we want to take forward? And did we factor in some time for that in today's meeting? So I mean, I'm not, I wasn't aware of all these timelines coming up or what the process would be here. So do we have, how do we decide what we want? Or do people right now off the top of their head have an idea of what they think would be a good resolution? I mean, that's that problem of not having seen resolutions for particularly two new.
Well, I can get
Board
something
members.
to you before my next meeting, and then immediately after the meeting, I can send a report to everyone telling you what we've discussed as possibilities. So then that means that before the end of March, we'll at least have some things we can be
Right.
thinking about. We can communicate via email and maybe make a decision at the next meeting.
Yeah, I would think that, I mean, that would be good to have that, and also the ability to look at some of the old resolutions, because there could be stuff that doesn't come up, but that when we come back in April, that we might still want to hazard that we're gonna put out there as a little small force, a resolution that we would still want to submit, even if there hadn't been discussion of it at the larger tables. Because I think sometimes, I think we have to also represent some of our issues. I mean, there's ones that meet everybody's need, but they also have to respect that we might have something that's different, that's going forward.
That's,
So,
yeah, unique for maybe rural areas.
yeah,
So if we do propose something, it means that somebody will have to stand up at the AGM and speak to it, of course.
Right.
Just
But
FYI.
even before that, I think like you raise a good point in that we actually, I mean, I have no idea, like what are the issues that might be specific to this? Like, I have no idea, like we don't have time to sit and talk about stuff like that, so we are, often you would go with whatever other people then say, oh yeah, that's a good idea to support, right? But what is it as the Nelson Police Board? What do
Well,
we?
what have we talked about at all these meetings? Funding for recruits, getting a larger proportion of the confiscated property funds that
Forfeiture act.
the forfeiture, I mean, those are obvious things.
Well, I think, I know as a board, I'd like to have more information about decriminalization. I mean, I think that's, this whole decrim thing has a huge impact on policing. I don't know exactly what my resolution is, but I need more support and I need more, well, I brought it up actually. I think we were too late. That was a late resolution to the AKBLG, which is only a month away, is funding. I expect somebody to throw some money at the municipality. I mean, whether or not it lands on the police budget line or the city. I mean, you're asking us to do something that we have tied our hands. You don't let the police can't enforce. They try to enforce. You can't even hand out a card. So, there's a little bit of craziness there in my mind when I look at it.
Training too.
Mhm.
That goes on. And the other thing is that the safe communities money, I mean, we need to think about what kind of, maybe there's some motions in there around ensuring
How
some kind
that's
of equitable distribution of that money, given that it's going to be different for different things. And the other one, and I mean, I don't know if this is where I get all confused about my job at the city and my job here. But the e-com thing, now, I know e-com's just like a burr in everybody's saddle.
It'll come up
As it
for
will
sure.
be as ours, that's gonna come up. But they have to remember that us and who else doesn't use e-com?
Up the RCMP don't.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that, because they've cut a check. I read that another one of the things is there's money for e-com. I just read it last week. The It's not a lot, it's 150 million or something that the government's ready to throw at it. And it can't be all, and I said this to Kevin, I said, this e-com money all can't go to e-com. Because there's those of us who don't, like if you're throwing money at it, there's those outliers
Mhm.
that also have to conform with the CRTC
Fund their own dispatch, so.
regulations. And so we need a little bit of like that
That pie.
too. And so I've asked Kevin to get all over it because.
Janice, you've just come up with 3 resolutions.
Well, you really shouldn't allow me to talk. No. Stop now. But those are the kind of things that I.
So we've got a total of 4. We
Yeah.
have to just decide whether or not we actually want to flesh them out and submit.
Well,
them.
that's the whole thing, but now you've got 4, and then if other people have ones, once you guys see them, so do try to take, so if you can get us
I
some
will.
old ones to look at,
Mhm.
and you guys take a look,
Yeah.
and then it'll get the juices kind of flowing, and then maybe shoot some more, and then at least if you have a list of even one sentence, while you're sitting in your meeting, you can kind of see like, okay, there's some flavor for that, yeah, we can rate this, and it can look like it's, making sure it's covering off our needs.
Mhm.
And let's carve out, if we could just make sure on the agenda for April, that we have a bit of time and
Resolutions.
for resolutions. And I hate to be the burden, but hopefully within your ability to do the work, you'd be able to finalize what those look like. Because I mean, we sit around at City Hall and we talk about, we'd like these as resolutions, and then we go, staff.
I can help with that for sure, but I want to make sure that the chief and the deputy also take a look because there may be things that you would like to see in there that we might not be aware
Well,
of.
there is one that we talked about in the past, but again, how do you make it into a resolution? I'm not sure, but just the issues that the OPCC investigation, given it puts on smaller departments.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
You know,
Critical
I mean, the time, and then,
Yeah.
like this last one, we ended up with a quarter of the office on
Yeah.
reassigned duties.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
Yep, should be an easy one to write.
yeah, and the impact on smaller
Yeah.
departments.
And just in regards to that, Chief, I've had so many crazy invites for things, but I've been invited to be able to comment again on those changes that have been anticipated for the Police Act. I think that's what they're asking.
The reform of the
Yeah.
police act.
Yeah. The thing. And so one of the things I have at the top of my page is this OPCC, but more about the fact of using some kind of restorative justice model before we trot down this road, because I happened to be forceful when I handed you your card. And now you filed a complaint against me. Right? So I think there has to be some kind of stopgap. So, I mean, I see that. I also see that personally, mayors have got to stop being chair. Not that you would want to lose me, but I'm not that
You would
self-righteous to think that
You might not have to
yeah.
manage the meetings.
So, yeah, so I'm trying to go back and find some time to carve out to reread all of the documents that came out, because I thought, well, if you keep asking me if I'd like to make a comment, well, you're gonna get a comment from me. So,
Well, the issue on it that I've been saying since I got here is the low level discipline things that should be dealt with the
Yeah.
same day or within a day or two of it happening, turn to be so complicated, and drawn out that, 4 months, 6 months later, when it's actually time to address the member who had the misconduct, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Exactly.
And it's been so much time that I see where discipline authorities and departments don't even bother dealing with the minor discipline because it's
Mhm.
so onerous on the department.
I know, you wouldn't do that with a toddler or a puppy
No, I'm doing,
Or a student.
or a student. Why do you do it with adults?
anyways, just that was an aside there on that.
Can I
Okay.
just jump in there, Mayor? I think I just kind of looked in to what you said, $150 million.
Yeah.
I think they said 99% goes to e-com, or 99% of work done by e-com. They're giving them 90 million. And 60 million is going back to the municipality.
Well,
So I agree with you in the sense that we should be applying.
yeah, and
get
that 60 million is going to UBCM.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I that number yet. So 140, that's almost 150,000. I got the math. right? Like,
No, you did.
yeah, the numbers in my head just sort of explode, but it's that whole thing is that we've got to make sure that
We get a chunk of it.
we get it right. Because the thing is that just because 60 is going to UBCM does not mean that those areas that do this on their own are getting any money. I didn't see the outliers mentioned in that at
Well,
all.
we're the only ones.
Yeah,
Everybody else.
well, but we see, and so then there it is the rub, because we wouldn't be getting 60 million if they're giving 90 million to run everybody else.
Yeah.
So to me, that money that's going to UBCM is for probably a lot of other kind of work that UBCM does. So
It might be
I want-
individual
I want-
municipal staffing
I
or
want to
something.
know the 5%, like, I want the 5% to come directly to Nelson. And I said to Kevin, I said, buddy, you gotta get all over this because it's not a lot of money to start with. And we need to make sure that we have our money because we have to be ready to go as well in 2025.
Yeah.
And so,
I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think we have a rightful ask.
Yeah.
Everything.
Just from the dispatch.
Yeah.
Not the
Yeah.
other
Yes.
60.
yeah. And you know what? And Gary McIsaac and I are on the phone. At least I never knew that the chair of UBCM was going to become my next best dial-up friend, but it seems that we've got quite a relationship going on the phone. So I will also be speaking with him and I will actually see McIsaac tomorrow when I get to Kimberley. So I will be bending his ear because it's all newly elected. So nobody will want to talk to him because they won't know what his job is. So I'll keep him busy.
Sounds good.
Okay. So nothing else then? And you're
I'll
gonna
get,
let-
I'll
you're
get
gonna-
information to
you're
all
gonna
of
let
you.
me know when I'm ordering those bridges.
Yes, I will. We're meeting on the 15th.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said that. And then you said that you're meeting on the 20th, but the 15th is your committee.
The 15th is the committee, but the thing is that Veronica basically said, let's wait till registration closes on the
Right.
31st of March. And then we'll just pick a number and we'll let you know right away.
Yeah, and that's fine. And the same thing for the cards. I told the other
Yeah.
woman about the cards that.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Just making myself some more notes here. I got a great memory, but it's pretty bloody short. So, I'm next.
You have the floor.
I have the floor.
No.
So, yeah, I'm sure there'll be something for the chair to report in the, in camera, but the chief's done a fine job of handling the public media in regards to WhatsApp. So the media release did the trick to sort of slow down. the-
Diffuse things a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I only got, I think I got 2 requests overall. I just referred them back, so.
Yeah.
That was, worked, well. Yeah, other than that, the other thing is that can't guarantee that there isn't gonna be disruption outside of the library on Saturday, but the police are upstairs and you guys are aware of the potential library issue coming up. It's always good to be ahead of those things. At this point, that event has been canceled.
Has it been canceled for sure?
Well, you're gonna probably, Tracy's still working on that. It's been, what media has been told when they've walked up the street to try to interview somebody is it's been postponed.
Hmm.
So it's definitely not happening on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we had a meeting last night and she was saying that she and the staff were going to talk about it today.
Yeah, so you're
And
gonna have another meeting, no doubt, because there'll be a press release, but there's still some thought that people will be on both sides of the issue, will still be coming to be outside the library
Disruptive.
on Saturday. So,
Okay.
and the police have been somewhat involved in terms of some of the, of course, the faceless Facebook. There's been some nasty comments and threats made. So, not that I don't do Facebook, but some have been forwarded to me because it was thought that I should see them. So, they haven't been too nice. And I have had a number of people that actually wrote me emails that weren't all that nice, but I just kind of write down their name and then hit delete, so. Anyways, that's my report. So I'm gonna be talking to whenever I can about anything to do with the issues that I hear coming up at this board. I think that's what I'm supposed to do as part of the job without getting to be too obnoxious. And of course, I'm going to the LGLA and it's the local, so it's just our local group. So I'm the only mayor who would be attending that actually has a police force, because there aren't any police force in the east and west Kootenai. So it's not one that I rise often to speak to, but there will be, there will be some discussions around the activities of government. And I'm sure somewhere in the conversation will come up with things like the decriminalization. The mental health issue is constantly on everybody's agenda at all times. And just, this is sort of this particular meeting is for new elected officials, more or less. So I'm doing a panel as an experience. As I was leaving the door, Mike says to me, "Oh, that's the code word for old." Board members. So there will be things around like code of conduct and all those things we want to. So if there's any new breaking things, I'll share that with you the next time we.
Cool.
So, and the new business late item is the Canadian Association of Police Governance. The meeting that's in August, the 14th and the 19th, which is the exciting meeting that is, if I'm not mistaken, if I've got this right now, this is in St. John's,
Newfoundland.
Indeed. So again, I guess we need to look at the budget line and see what the costs are and see who's available. I know one board member has mentioned to me that they're interested in going, but yeah, I think consideration based on whatever's in the budget needs to be looked at. So it'll be a very
What
interesting.
is in the budget? Just out of curiosity. I
I
don't,
only have the top part of the
yes,
agenda.
you've put the conference amount, but how much is in our line item? Do you know?
Oh, 20 to 25,000.
For board.
For board expenses for the year.
Oh. Now we got a few people.
Do we get any points for not spending it the last couple of years? No,
Say we
Carry
haven't been
forward.
spending
It isn't the regional district of Central Kootenai. We don't roll over the.
unspent amount of money.
Well, they roll that over. So if you haven't spent your money, it gets rolled over, which I take issue with that. I've always brought that up, as I didn't think that was really fair. So you could get to, I think it's 2,500 a year you get for discretionary, and so you could have 10,000 or something like that, or maybe it's 3,000. So you get this huge amount at the end. So the last year you could go on, I don't know, I guess you could go to Florida for some kind of municipal conference. I don't know what you do with that money.
But that's attached to a person, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
each one of them, so
This
20 of
is-
them.
This is the police
Yeah.
governance line, like, I think it's quite different. It's not
Well, but I
just
mean,
one
even
person.
if you just divided that up, there's 5 of you, so that's like 5,000 each.
But it doesn't come to us, is what I'm
No,
saying.
no,
You know what I
no,
mean?
of
Like
course, you
if
have to
two
be
people are
approved.
available, they go, if whoever's
Yeah.
available,
Yeah, per person.
but it stays.
So it would be good to get those, whoever's interested and can go, that would be good to probably have that in April, definitely May at the latest, because hotels, you're going to a part of the country that does most of their business probably in August in terms of trying to book the hotel rooms and flights there. I could tell you, I was there last year, and the flight to St. John's, besides being like 2 days to get there and 3 days to get back, is very expensive.
I think Shallow
We've got
takes
1,600.
care of all
Yeah.
that.
19 hours.
No.
That's long.
God, I
And
could
then
go
that's
to
what we have to
Denmark
play
for
to
that.
fly.
Yeah, yeah.
You gotta, yeah, planes fly. So anyhow, so check your calendars, everybody. Now, do we send chief, or does one of you come to accompany us with bodyguards, or?
We're open to requests, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess you get to go to your own conferences, so. Okay. And I did want to bring up police governance. Am Nakvi sat on this committee, is my understanding, for probably almost all the time he was on. And I have I went to the first one just because, of course, it dropped in my mailbox. I would be happy to see anybody that would be interested in attending these meetings. Now, the crux of it is that they are, for the most part, during the day. It seemed to me I started this meeting at like, I want to say it was like 10 in the morning to accommodate for the fact that this is a Canadian meeting. So they're trying to accommodate everybody having a time that sort of works for them. So this is kind of a midday, which might exclude a number of people from participating in these calls, but I would really encourage somebody else to join me.
I'd be interested in, I mean, I'm not going to commit to all of them, but I commit to the next one.
Yeah, I will send you the information.
Please do.
for the next one.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So the next meeting is April the 5th. Oh, okay, so I'll tell you right now, I won't be here. So if I could ask Sue, would you mind, you're the most experienced person, would you mind sharing that
Sure.
meeting that day? I will try to remote in, but I think it's, I don't like to chair remotely.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, so sorry about that. You know, I'm actually gonna try to go away. Yeah, and I'm not coming back until the 7th.
No problem.
Good luck.
Yes, I'm only in the United States, so I can always come home if I need to, but not for this meeting.
It'd have to be a bigger crisis.
It has to be a bigger
meeting.
crisis than a meeting. Yeah. So, okay. So I can have call adjournment, please. As moved, seconded, all those in favor? Okay. And if I could have a motion to move into the in-camera meeting, moved, seconded, all those in favor? Okay. And the consent agenda regarding the in